Gentleman from Fairfax, Mr. Albo.
Speaker speaking to the bill, please.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, my job here is to talk a little bit about the Northern Virginia perspective and explain to you the Northern Virginia package. But first I want to tell you, how did we get here? Well, when I drive in the morning here, I go from Springfield area to Richmond in the morning. And on 95, from Fredericksburg past Springfield, it's about 45 miles, it is packed. In the morning, all you see is lights, rows and rows and rows of lights of people going about 15 or 25 miles an hour. If you don't live where I live, you might find it hard to believe that for me to get to my office in Arlington, especially if I need to get to court, I can't be late, I have to allot an hour and a half to drive 12 miles. This is something we live with every day. That's how we got here. The Texas Transportation Institute did a study. They didn't have to tell me that we were number one because I live it every day. We are the most congested area in the entire United States. Not an award I ever wanted to have. How do we get here? I want to address some of the emails I've been getting from people wondering why we need to do this. Why can't we just spend money from other areas of government to build roads? Well, first of all, in 1986, was that when we did, Vivian? Right, 1986, we set gas tax at 17.5 cents per gallon. It cost $25,000 to pave a mile of road in 1986. It now costs $80,000, and you're still getting 17.5 cents a gallon. You add to that cars have dramatically better fuel efficiency, so people are not paying the same amount to drive the same distance, and some cars don't even use gas at all. In fact, I think in one of the studies said that probably 10% of the cars on the roads within about 10 years will be electric. Mathematics shows us that there is no money. So that means that our situation right now is so bad, a lot of people don't realize this, there is not one penny to put a stoplight in the entire state of Virginia. There is not one penny to put a turn lane in. There is not one penny to put a little cut on the sidewalk so handicapped people can get from one side of the street to the other. That is how bad it is. All we have is maintenance money. Because maintenance has drained construction, by 2017, there will not be one penny to build any road that is not also federally funded. That's how bad it is. We have a choice today. We can do nothing, or we can do something. That's basically it. Now, I never choose do nothing. So let's talk about doing something. There's two ways you can do it. You can transfer money from other areas of government and build roads, or you can raise new revenue. I want to transfer money. So for years, and especially this year, I've been trying to figure out how to do it. The Speaker put me on JLARC, which has been very educational for me, kind of boring sometimes too. Well, most times actually. But, but here's what I've learned. You think of the general fund budget. Remember, non-general fund are the things you can't touch. That's people pay tuition for college, and it sits in the non-general fund because it's designated to college. People pay fees for farms and things like that. It gets set aside. I'm talking about the discretionary budget. It's now only $17.7 billion. The reason is because we have gotten through the worst recession since the Great Depression by cutting. I'm honored to be part of that team. I think it's a thing we needed to do. But if you look at a JLARC report on state spending, and I don't know if you can, let me see if I can see this. This is a graph of general fund spending. General fund spending the last 10 years. You can see it's flat. This is adjusted for population and inflation. This one is absolute numbers. if you look at these things, see that? If you look at these things, you will see that we are spending at less than 2007 levels, despite the fact the population has increased, inflation has increased, and Medicaid goes up 100% every 10 years. And because we've made the tough choices on this House floor, we have been able to cut government and live within our means. But that means our pie is small. So let's talk about diverting money from one area of government to another to pay for roads. Of this pie, this $17 billion pie, 50% is education. Counties, cities have a constitutional obligation, they can't get around it, they have to give a kid a fair education. If you cut education, they are going to raise real estate taxes. You're not going to want to do that. If you cut higher ed, we don't even have money to get in-state kids into slots in higher education. You're not going to cut that. So 50% is off the table. Medicaid is 25%. Medicaid is a joint federal-state program. We are at the minimum. The federal will not let us cut anything. You cannot touch the 25% Medicaid. That's off the table. Public safety. The gentleman from Charlottesville and I have done a study to try to figure out whether this rumor that there are nonviolent people in prison is true. There are no nonviolent people in prison. I should never say no. There are almost no nonviolent people in prison. It is near impossible to get a millisecond in prison for possession of drugs or stealing something. And when Governor Kane tried to save money by cutting public safety, what he did was he established an early release, and the gentleman from Charlottesville read us the list, and that included drug dealers, child pornographers, and lots of other unsavory people you don't want in your neighborhood. So, 50% education, 25% Medicaid, 15% public safety. Guess what? We've got 10% we can look at. 10% of the budget we can look at to see if we want to build roads with it. Well, guess what that is? That's everything else the government does. Everything else. 10%. And in that is your $950 million car tax repeal. So, when I was looking for $1 billion to solve transportation, I realized that there's only $750 million left, and you can't find $1 billion when your pie is $750 million. It is mathematically impossible. And I tell my constituents that who write me. I don't know who's telling you this. It is mathematically impossible to find $1 billion in the general fund. So, I've got one choice. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to solve this problem. So here's what we came up with. A Northern Virginia transportation package. For many of you, this is not new. This is all based on the Albo, Rust, May, Watts, Callahan Speaker's Bill from 2007. Our idea was that let us be free to solve our problem. I'm not asking any of you outside Northern Virginia to do anything. Just let me solve my problem. Under the non-negotiable rule that 100% of the money stays here. That's fair, right? If I'm going to solve my problem, I'm not sending you the money. Let us do it. I have to tell you, spread thank yous around, that the gentlelady from Fairfax has been really amazingly sharp on this issue. She knows everything. I didn't treat myself as the conferee on this, which, by the way, I never want to do again, Mr. Speaker. As doing what Dave Albo wanted to do. I kind of figure that when you're appointed as conferee, you've got responsibilities to represent people. So you always represent your constituents, but I was put there to represent Northern Virginia and to represent my caucus. I had an open process. Vivian might as well have been a conferee. Gentlemen from Fairfax, Mr. Russ, Mr. Lemunion, gentlemen from Loudon, Mr. May, others, we all kind of worked collaboratively together. It was an open process. We didn't want to do anything behind anybody's back. And the gentlelady from Fairfax, Delegate Watts, is also my motivation for this. Because if this passes, and passes the Senate, and the governor signs it, I will never, for the rest of my life, have to listen to her morning hour speech about transportation funding. That should lead us to a 100% vote here. Okay, so we're almost done. Here's how it works. We create this pot. The pot is called the Northern Virginia Transportation Fund. Into this pot, we're going to put three funding sources. The three funding sources are a 0.7 cent sales tax, a 0.25% fee when you sell a home. So on a $500,000 home, that's $1,250, and a 3% hotel. How is that money divided? Well, the first 30% gets sent back to the locality based on how much they paid. And of that money, the locality has to spend the money on transportation. The remaining 70 is picked from this fund that is, or not a fund, but a list that was devised by the gentleman from Fairfax's bill from 2 years ago, has VDOT, CTB, and Northern Virginia Transportation Authority analyze projects based upon congestion reduction, cost effectiveness, et cetera, and the NVTA must pick a project from that list. So we don't have silly projects, we have projects that move people. Now, there are a couple things I want you to point out here for your Northern Virginia people. Remember, my non-negotiable rule, absolute, is this money will never be spent outside Northern Virginia, and it will never be spent on anything but transportation. When you look at the bill, you will see three places, lines 55 through 56, lines 96 through 97, and in Lackawanna language in lines 2660, which guarantee that the money stays in Northern Virginia and is never spent on anything that's not transportation related. The only thing new in this bill is what I call the kill switch. It's on lines 2660. That law says that if any of the money is ever spent outside Northern Virginia, and it's also included Hampton Roads is in the kill switch, outside Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia, and ever spent on anything that's not transportation, the revenue sources die. Why is that important? The budget overrides everything. So the way you get really stabbed in the back around here is you have the budget guys say, notwithstanding, yeah, what? Notwithstanding, yes, notwithstanding law X.
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment. Oh.
So what we do is, if the money's ever spent outside Northern Virginia Hampton Roads, ever spent on non-transportation, on December 31st, the revenue source dies. So when you get here on the second Wednesday of January, there's nothing that exists. There's nothing that can say notwithstanding two. It should be 100% foolproof. Ladies and gentlemen, why do we hate Congress? Because they have their head in the sand and they pretend problems don't exist. And when they take their head out of the sand, they don't want to compromise. They want everything 100% their way, and nothing gets done, including they can't even pass a budget for 4 years. I will not behave like Congress. I want to get the problem solved, and I hope that you will join me in doing what needs to be done and solve the problem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.